Hello and welcome to Lunchtime Politics on Channels Television. I'm Millicent Walker. On the news this hour, President Muhammadu Buhari arrives Tokyo ahead of the 7th International Development Conference for Africa as economy and security tops the agenda. Nigeria's anti-corruption war comes under close watch in light of recent cybercrimes, failed contract and high-level corruption allegations. And it's time for stock taking on Nigeria's military quest in fighting insecurity. Nigeria's military chief speaks on the federal government's efforts in securing the nation. Welcome everyone to the program. We begin with President Muhammadu Buhari's arrival in Japan now for the 7th Tokyo International Conference on African Development, TCAD 7. The conference themed Africa and Yokohama, sharing passion for the future, will take place between August the 28th and the 30th. It is expected to focus on Africa's economic transformation and improvement in business environments, institution through private investment and innovation, promotion of resilient and sustainable African society for human security, peace and stability in support of Africa's domestic proactive efforts. Now, while in Japan, President Buhari will also attend a state banquet and honor the invitation of Emperor Naruhito to a tea reception at the Imperial Palace. In addition to a bilateral meeting with Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, the president will attend some side events and meet chief executive officers of some Japanese companies with investments in Nigeria. Our correspondent Ibrahim Adra is in Japan for the international conference. He joins us now via Skype. Hello, Ibrahim. What are some of the activities lined up ahead of the conference starting on the 28th?
Well, let me just upfront tell you that Mr. President just arrived some 10-15 minutes ago at the Haneda Airport, and that's one of the airports in Yokohama. He's going to ride on the road and come to the hotel, the Royal Park Hotel, that's reserved for visiting heads of state. That journey should take about 30-40 minutes. Perhaps by the time your program is ending, the president will be arriving at his hotel here. But then talking about what is lying up, we do know that the president will be having side events where countries are expected to be discussing bilateral issues that concern them. Expectedly, Nigeria will be pushing more than anything else the security issues as well as science and technology, and then issues of education and industrialization. And these are issues that are of paramount importance to Nigeria. And expectedly, the Japanese businessmen are also interested. In spite of the challenges facing Nigeria as a nation, it still remains a force to reckon with on the African continent, one that a lot of countries want to do business with. If for nothing, it has this large population that is attractive to countries. And besides that, it is one place where investment has a very high yield and very high return. And so it's expected to be very robust. Now, on the surface, these are the issues that have been put forward, but on concrete terms, what deals will come out is what we need to wait and see at the end of this conference.
I just have two questions to ask you before we let you go. And that is, we hear Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is at the G7 summit and there's supposed to be a bilateral talk with the president. When is he expected back? And also the IPOB threats. I'm sure you've also seen and heard about reports, the IPOB threatening to disgrace the president. What do we know?
Well, not much. I've been speaking with staff of the embassy as well as security details that came here, and it looked far-fetched. It might just turn out to be a mere threat, because one would expect in diplomatic community, the Chinese government, who is a host, in, the Japanese government, I beg your pardon, the host in this instant, wouldn't want to allow that. Besides, the security is uptight, both at the residence, that's the hotel where the president will be staying, as well as the conference center. So I really don't see how that would be possible. Perhaps a little bit of line up by the roadside at a distance, probably carry banners and placards like it's done elsewhere, yes, but attack, that's far-fetched, Millicent. I don't see that really happening.
Allow you go at this time. We'd like to thank you, Ibrahim Adra, with the latest there from the Tokyo conference, saying that the president has indeed arrived. And let's not forget, it's to begin the 28th to the 30th. We'll continue to bring you updates on that. Also, the federal government has been reacting to some of the arrests made by the United States Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, of some Nigerians charged with what has been described as one of the biggest cases of internet fraud in the United States. Now, President Buhari's media aide, Mr. Govt, while speaking on Sunday Politics, told Channels Television that the government of Nigeria will cooperate with the United States government on the prosecution of suspects and, where necessary, extradition to achieve justice. He, however, says the actions of the suspects should not be used as a yardstick to judge other Nigerians.
They know that the action of a few Nigerians is not the action of all of Nigerians. We are 200 million plus in this country. And you're talking about 80 in this case in the United States of America. They will face the justice system of the country. If the Nigerian government is required to cooperate in any way, extradition or any other way, yes, if it meets the requirements of our laws, they will be assisted to prosecute them and to face justice in those cases. But this thing is not about Nigerians. Nigerians are hardworking and honest people all over the world. There are millions of our citizens who are out there earning legitimately their own incomes. No, they don't deserve to be so tarnished. Yes, they are talking to our Ministry of Justice. The Diaspora Commission is also there, primarily concerned for those rights of fellow citizens. The Nigerian government has taken a position on this matter. It's cooperation all the way. We will cooperate.
In the meantime, the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, has written to the Minister of Justice and Attorney General of the Federation, Mr. Abubakar Malami, advising him to develop and adopt public registers for corrupt state governors and other high-ranking public officials charged with and convicted of grand corruption since the return of democracy in 1999. In the petition by the organization's Deputy Director, Mr. Kolawole Oluwadare, SERAP says, quote, that the proposed registers are far from severe and would be a proportionate response to the grave crime of grand corruption and impunity of perpetrators and have a deterrent effect. There can be no reasonable expectation of privacy in matters already exposed to public viewing, such as prior arrest charges and conviction records, end of quote. Furthermore, SERAP believes that the proposed registers for corrupt officials, when operational, would serve a public interest purpose, similar in some respects to the recently disclosed names and details by the U.S. Department of Justice of 80 defendants, most of whom are Nigerians, that have been charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering, aggravated identity theft, and other charges. Let's get more perspective on Nigeria's anti-corruption war. We're joined by the Special Assistant, from the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation, Mr. Kehinde Ogini. We'd like to welcome you to the program.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, now, looking at what SERAP has said, do we adopt public register for corrupt state governors, high-ranking officials?
If I may say, it's an idea that has been brought up by SERAP. Of course, we know what SERAP does. We know what they come with ideas and all of that. It's something that the government will look into. I can tell you that the Office of the Honorable Attorney General will look at the petition dispassionately and act on it.
Many Nigerians have been talking about that, calling for that, and they even gave the example that no expectation of privacy in matters that are already in the public, for example. But is it also just enough to shame them? Shouldn't there be legislation barring them, for example, from attaining a position, in public office?
Well, like I said, it is a petition that the government, and by extension, in this instance, the Attorney General of the Federation, will have to look at dispassionately. I have not seen the petition. Of course, the content of the petition and what SERAP is asking for will go a long way to determine the next line of action that the government will take in that regard. It might not be apt for me to say what the government would do to a petition that I've not seen at this point in time.
So
But
how has the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation been fighting corruption issues, matters?
Oh, the truth is that we know the power of the Attorney General. The Office of the Honorable Attorney General is created pursuant to Section 150 of the Nigerian Constitution, and the power of the Attorney General, as we could see, is clearly features in Section 174. Of course, by virtue of the fact that he leads, it's a focal person as far as the fight against corruption is concerned. The office, I can assure you, has been fighting corruption because the Honorable Attorney General coordinates the anti-corruption program of the government, of course, in collaboration with the relevant agencies of the federal government. And I can tell you that the Office of the Honorable Attorney General has been very, very forthcoming in prosecuting all sorts of crimes, from terrorism crimes, terrorism activities, recovering assets, and all of that. Where necessary, sometimes the Office of the Attorney General does refer cases to the relevant agencies to treat them. And of course, you know that the Office of the Attorney General also has that power to continue or to discontinue or to take over whatever case as the case may be, based on the merit or based on the findings and the available investigation. So I can say that the Office of the Honorable Attorney General has been a critical stakeholder, the leading government public office that has been driving the anti-corruption policies of the federal government.
So take, for example, the financial crimes cases and the recent one with the FBI where some Nigerians suspects were penciled. How much is the Office of the Attorney General aware of that investigation with the United States government?
Let me start by saying it's not a sharing news for us as Nigerians. It is not something anybody, you and I, should be happy about. But as it were, Nigeria has adequate legal framework to deal with similar situations. No nation, no serious, no responsive government will watch and see its country being damaged by the activities of the cyber criminals. Of course, Nigeria has similar law that deals with cybercrime, the Cyber Prohibition and Prevention Act of 2015, under which the federal government, the Attorney General of the Federation, has a very key position. I mean, has a key role to fight corruption. When we look at Section 51 and particularly Section 52 of Cyber Crime Acts of the Law of the Federation, the Attorney General is empowered to make a request or to receive requests for purpose of investigating, for purpose of apprehending the cyber criminal or those who have been alleged of committing crime.
Were they aware with this investigation of the FBI investigating these Nigerians in the United States?
With what is in the public space, some of them are not in the U.S. currently. Some of us are just scattered all over. But Section 52 of the Cyber Crime Act is so clear about it. Whether at the instance of the U.S., the Attorney General is empowered on its own to forward information to foreign authority where required to ensure the apprehension and investigation of people who have been alleged of financial crime. The power of the Attorney General under that Act is such that it can, without even request from the foreign country, to even supply or give information to foreign authority, that information capable of ensuring that people who have been alleged to have committed cyber crimes are brought or are repatriated. Of course,
so is that one of the plans, one of the objectives? Is that something the Office of the Attorney General will be doing, extraditing them?
No. I can't tell you. I can tell you for a fact that Nigeria as a country has an obligation to ensure that the world is rid of cyber crimes. And Nigeria is not going to renege of that international obligation. So the Office of the Honorable Attorney General has a duty to cooperate with the foreign authority to ensure that those who have been found wanting, those who are culpable of violating the cyber criminal laws of its own country or of the foreign countries are brought to book.
All right, we'll come back to continue this discussion, plus also bring you the story, and that's the federal government's quest to curbing and fighting insecurity in the country. Join us again. Welcome back into some of our stories in brief. We begin with the Edo State Governor, Mr. Godwin Obaseki. He has assured that disciplinary actions will be meted to those who betrayed the party during the 2019 All Progressives Congress primary elections in the state. Governor Obaseki disclosed this while receiving the report of a committee set up by the Edo State chapter of the APC to reconcile aggrieved party members after the 2019 primary elections. The governor expressed appreciation to the committee for helping to review issues involving all the aspirants that participated, calling for compulsory monthly meetings across the various units, wards and local government areas. We continue our conversation with our guest from the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation, Mr. Kehinde Igini. Thank you for your patience. Just wrapping up on all of this, a lot of people are wondering, the image of Nigeria abroad. And, even a few people have said that there are certain people who have wanted to start to come here for investments, and they have changed their minds. And this is what's happening on social media, information from social media. But let's look at the contract, and that's the UK judgment agreement of about $9 billion with the PNID. I mean, how is the Office of the Attorney General handling this? We heard what he said last week about prosecuting those who had anything to do with the present, past government.
Well, thank you for that question. I'm sure you must have read what the Honorable Attorney General said when he was actually during the handing over ceremony. Of course, that is exactly what the government is going to do. It's in public space of what the basics of what is, the Office of the Honorable Attorney General will do. Of course, the details as to how the government is going to go about it might be preemptive at this point in time, more so when investigation will have to go into it. And, a matter of investigation, I wouldn't want to say anything that would jeopardize the strategic steps that the government will want to take. But all I can say is that as a government, as a responsible government, no nation will fold harm. And I see certain things being done without acting. Having said that, the Office of the Honorable Attorney General has the capacity and the authority by virtue of the power conferred on the occupant of that office, the Honorable Attorney General Abubakar Malami SAN, to take steps in that regard. And he had said clearly that the government will be taking up the matter by way of investigating the contract, the conception, the signing, and the formation of that contract, to ensure that those who are directly involved, who are directly or indirectly involved, either within or outside of government, home or abroad, on their international collaborators and agents.
So, that is also that on the one hand, but on the second hand, are they going to pay that money? Is the federal government going to pay that money? Because news in today is that they're seeking Nigerian assets abroad that they can get back their money.
The government is going to look at, of course, when government is taking a position, is handling the whole thing, the economic interest of Nigeria comforts in all of it, and you know what that translates into. So I can say that the government will look at the larger picture, which will entail ensuring that the economic interest of Nigeria is protected in that regard.
All right, we appreciate your time, Mr. Kehinde Igini from the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation, for joining us on the program.
Thank you so much.
Against the rising wave of trans-border crimes across the West African borders, the Nigeria Police is flagging off the Interpol Week to campaign against cross-border insecurity. It presents an opportunity for Nigeria's National Police Force to work with the global police community in investigating crime and bringing criminals to justice. The Minister of Police Affairs and the Inspector General of the Police are attending this summit in Abuja with members of other leading agencies, including the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, Immigration Services, Customs, National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, and the National Agency for Food, Drugs Administration and Control, NAFDAC. Let's join our correspondent, Terry Kumi, for the latest. Terry, what discussions are dominating the lineup of activities at the summit?
Well, hello, Millicent. The opening ceremony of the Interpol Week has just ended. It's the first time that it is happening. And the idea, according to Inspector General of Police, is that The Interpol Week is expected to draw attention to the role that Interpol plays in curbing security, transborder crimes, and so expectedly you have representatives of various security agencies here, as well as other agencies that are relevant to the fight against some of these crimes, the NDLEA, NAFDAC, and the likes. We also understand that the new building for Interpol is going to be erected somewhere at the central area. Just to let you know also that the National Central Bureau, that's the Interpol Abuja Bureau, says that during the 2019 elections, it succeeded in curbing, pulling down some websites to prevent hacking or spreading of false news, and also it helps draw attention of banks to some cyber crimes that are planned for them. The IGP in his speech tasked Interpol to help in the fight against the proliferation of small arms and light weapons. It's a week-long activity that will terminate sometime on Wednesday.
Terry Kumi, thank you for that latest there. Elsewhere, the Nigerian Army authorities have been speaking on its operations, particularly as they relate to human rights in various theatres of operations. This is coming against the backdrop of persistent allegations made by international organisations that the Nigerian Army violates the human rights of those that it fights. But the Chief of Army Policy and Plans, Lieutenant General Lamidi Adeosun, told Channels Television's Ladia Kiriduluale on our programme Newsnight that those organisations are guilty of hypocrisy and that the Army has scrupulously followed its rules of engagement under international humanitarian law since day one.
Nigerian military, and particularly the Nigerian Army, is not a rebel force, it's a regular army that goes through all the processes of adequate training, taught on human rights, on international humanitarian law. We have our rules of engagement, and we have our code of conduct. Aside from that, if somebody and violates any of those codes and rules and regulations that I've mentioned, there are standing court-martials. Investigation is done. If there are doubts or there are signs of culpability, they are referred to court-martial. Court-martial deals with the situation. Some soldiers and officers have gone to jail from court-martial. If we have internal capacity to deal with situations, why should an outsider come and tell us, no, what you are doing is wrong? It is what we bought from outside. Whose right? Whose interest?
Well, the full interview comes up later today on Newsnight at 9 p.m, only on Channels Television. To Imo State, where the state governor, Emeka Ihedioha, has reinstated his administration's commitment to job creation as a way of developing the state's economy. He was addressing youths at the Sam Mbakwe airport, saying that his government wouldn't be bothered or distracted by commentaries that do not represent the focus of his government. Well, that's it on the program. We'd like to thank you for watching. Don't forget, join the discussion on our social media platforms. I'm Millicent Walker. I'll see you soon.